We begin with the latest updates from the Democratic Republic of Congo, where the Rwanda-backed M23 rebels have begun tightening their grip over Bukavu, the second largest city in the Central African country's mineral-rich east. This a day after its capture, the Tutsi-led M23 rebel group was seen strengthening their control over Bukavu, which has a population of over 1 million and is the capital of South Kivu province. The rebels were seen promising the residents that they would restore peace and security around the city that saw severe looting in the wake of the clashes. In a statement read on local radio on Monday, a rebel alliance said that also includes the M23, that it would assist the population of Bukavu, who were abandoned by the Congolese army and allied combatants. Moreover, sharing a communique on social media platform X, the Rebel Alliance further urged all the vital forces of the Central African nation to unite in the struggle against the state gangsterism and terrorism. Furthermore, the rebel-appointed governor of the North Kivu province has also reportedly announced that Goma and Bukavu's ports will reopen on Tuesday. Navigation had been banned on Lake Kivu amid the escalating violence in the region. Besides, a day after its capture, Bukavu's border crossing with Rwanda also reportedly remained closed. Most shops and stores across the eastern DRC city were also shut. In spite of that, several Congolese people who fled from Bukavu following the clashes over the weekend were seen returning to their homes through the border crossings between Rwanda and the DRC.
We fled to Kamanyola last Friday after the fighting intensified. We have been there for 3 days, now even as the fighting went on. There was no way to go back from Kamanyola to Uvira, and the road was not accessible. So, today CPGL facilitated our repatriation through Rwanda. We are very grateful the way we were received and glad to be here and looking forward to getting back home.
There is no activity there, and everything is closed. But we have taken the courage to come to the border to go home. This is our home, and we have the right to go home.
Meanwhile, the DRC government in Kinshasa has criticized the inaction of the UN Security Council in the wake of the M23 rebel group seizing the city of Bukavu in the mineral-rich east. In a letter, the DRC's ambassador to the UN wrote that Kinshasa was outraged to see that the Security Council had been unable to reach a decision despite the gravity of the situation. The ambassador further said that the Security Council's paralysis had given free rein to the continuing illegal occupation of Congolese territories by Rwandan defense forces and their supporters from the M23 terrorist movement. He added that the Security Council must conduct an emergency meeting and urged the organization to act decisively and immediately. Last week, the DRC's President Felix Tshisekedi also slammed the international community for what he said was its lack of response to the escalating violence in the country.
If today my country has been attacked in an ostentatious fashion, and this hasn't practically moved the wider world, this totally calls into question international law. How can the integrity of a country be violated like this? Its people massacred without the country responsible being sanctioned. This raises the question of the United Nations, which for me has become a two-tier organization, depending on whether you are among the powerful or privileged countries, or whether you're among the weak and disadvantaged.
Now, the soaring crisis in the DRC's mineral-rich east has already killed thousands of people and has internally displaced millions, with many battling hunger and diseases such as the M23 has captured North Kivu province's capital Goma and neighboring South Kivu provinces Bukavu, Nyabibwe and KIVU, which has given it full control around Lake Kivu, one of the largest lakes in Africa. Despite the repeated calls for a solution to the conflict, there is no sight of the crisis coming to an end, or the warring parties coming to the negotiating table to discuss a peaceful resolution. Will the international community step up its efforts to end the escalating crisis? To discuss more on this, we have with us Beverly Achieng, a senior analyst at Control Risks, who is joining us live from Dakar in Senegal. Welcome to First Post.
Thank you so much for having me.
What are the key factors that have enabled the M23 rebels to advance so rapidly in eastern DRC, and how significant is their control over Bukavu for the broader conflict?
Well, M23 has shown that it has stronger military credentials compared with the DR Congolese army. This region is their stronghold, so they have been able to capitalize on their knowledge of the terrain, their apparent surrender by the DR Congolese army, and even having more sophisticated weapons and military formations to be able to advance into Bukavu within a very short time of seizing Goma, the neighboring regional capital. They're also benefiting, allegedly, from support from Rwandan forces, who are said to be between 4,000 and 5,000 in the region. And this is also happening in a context where there's been the partial withdrawal of UN peacekeepers, the loss of paramilitaries who are allegedly from Romania supporting the DR Congo government, but also some of the troops that were contributing to the regional Southern African Development Force have withdrawn from the conflict. The seizure of Bukavu, the airport, and even them controlling the ports means that there's limits to how much the DR Congolese army can intervene. But it also weakens President Tshisekedi, who had staked his claim to power in 2019 when he was elected, to settling the insurgency in the east. Despite imposing military rule, despite military operations, M23 has continued to gain territorially and also to discredit his government politically with this seizure.
And Beverly, with the M23 tightening its grip on major cities, how is the Congolese government and military responding? And what role is the international community playing in either deterring or facilitating any negotiations?
I mean, the government has said that it's not going to talk to M23 and it will continue with military action. And this has led to a bit of an awkwardness around how the regional and international community are likely to either intervene or how they're accused of fueling the conflict. So we saw that there was a summit by the East African community and the Southern African Development Community over the past week. They had called for Rwandan troops to leave and for M23 to cease fire, but this has not been adhered to. And in fact, the two regional blocs have more or less been left bickering over who is responsible for the conflict escalating to this extent. DR Congo has tried to appeal to the international community for sanctions against Rwanda, but they haven't been able to achieve that so far.
And given the long-standing tensions between Rwanda and the DRC, how might these latest territorial gains by the M23 impact regional stability? And is there a risk of further escalation involving neighboring countries?
Well, yes, definitely, because not just M23, but various other rebel groups have links to regional countries. So the FDLR, which Rwanda has claimed has been fighting the DR Congolese army, Burundian forces have been present in Sud Kivu. Uganda said that they will be sending additional reinforcements to be able to support the fighting in the region. So it means that there's going to be bound to be a regional conflagration because of more countries being pulled in to either intervene or to fight against rival rebel groups and dissident groups based in Eastern DRC.
Beverly, thank you very much for being with us on First Post Africa and for your valued analysis and insights.
We're calling the show Vantage. We hope you like what we put together for you. Touted as the minimum defense from that video. India's neighbors were the first to send the special edition of Vantage live from the White House throughout this week. Yes, Hindu Mandir, we're on our way to Tel Aviv. Measure, but it's also the perfect way to drive
I don't think that
Prime Minister of Bhutan, Sherin Thagbir. Welcome to
60% of the world's
office, Prime Minister Modi. Did the iron. We were actually. How are you doing? How do you like? It's been 1 year since that meeting. Iron bars separate you from the outside. Out the vote effort. Trump had, it says, and at $4.3 trillion. 300 billion by 2030. That's what we need to tackle climate change.